Hello, and you are back in the Velvet Room with Jokerthefool. This is our 20th episode, and today we will be discussing how we shouldn't flip the bill for more forever wars or take sides and the need for work. So we're going to get right into this with more forever war funding is on the way. If the Biden administration gets their way, they want $105 billion in emergency funding. They made that request to Congress, and you might think I would be against such a thing, but I'm actually all for it. Where do I sign the check? Oh, wait, you already took it from my bank account. Thank you very much, right? Okay, that's a bit facetious, but the whole thing is that there is a war machine that exists, and it wants to be oiled up as much as possible. And the forever war funding, the forever wars in the Middle East and Ukraine now, is the mechanism as to keep the war machine going. Lockheed Martin, um, all the other companies, but Lockheed Martin is the biggest one. But Boeing, all these companies that get military contracts, they get a lot of money by manufacturing weaponry, whether that be like missiles or guns, ballistics, airplanes, tanks, cars. The military is a gigantic contractor for a lot of private corporations. Like Lockheed Martin is the only one that I can think of right now, but there are a bunch of weapons manufacturers, and they make bank, and they make bank off of the government bloated military budget. And the military budget is only justified in being as bloated as it is if we can hold on to this need to be the world police with all the world bases and the forever war funding and bombing any country that disagrees with us. And that's why the Biden administration puts in this 105 aid request, and a lot of that money is going to get funneled into Israel and Ukraine to just send them more weapons. And who do you think makes those weapons? Large corporations like Lockheed Martin. I keep harping on Lockheed Martin because it's the only one that I can remember in my mind. But these companies, they are basically their bread and butter is military contracts, and when money talks, it's a very, I would say, nefarious thing where you're banking on war, death, pain, and suffering. No matter how bad it is for the human condition, that is what you're relying on for profitability in an economic sense. And when 9/11 happened, when these wars happened, you had people raving and cheering because it means more work for them, more money for them. That's the way it works for a lot of people. People are very depraved, and also, if you're in America, you're also very detached from the Middle East, because it's thousands of miles away, and it's a bunch of brown people you don't care about. So who cares if they all get bombed to shit and their homes go completely destroyed and it's all rubble and ash? You get to go to the bank and cash check after check and make so much bank off of these wars, off of these military contracts. And that is a big reason why these forever wars keep on happening, is because there are very powerful people who profit so much from it. War is very good for the economy. It's what World War II is what pulled the U.S. economy out of the Great Depression, right? So that's inherent proof as to how good war is for the economy. And going into that time of history as well, Nazi Germany militarized, and that pushed them out of the post-World War I slump that they had, with all the reparations that they had to repay for losing the war and being quote-unquote responsible for it. But that's a bit of a tangent. The whole point I'm making is that war is very good for the economy, and the people who benefit the most from war are in the upper echelons, whether they're the owners of private military companies, these large weapon manufacturers, the generals, admirals, the higher up in the military chain of command. They are all the people who benefit from these wars keep on going on, from there being a war machine, from having all these dozens of bases across the world, and the need to keep them going. And of course, with war, it leads to tribalism, right? We're seeing it with the Israel-Hamas war, right? You're either a Zionist pig or a terrorist sympathizer, and you can only be that. You can't say, well, I don't trust the IDF or Hamas. I don't want to, say Israel has a right to defend itself or to free Palestine, because whether or not that geographical area becomes the domain of Israel or Gaza is not up to me, and it's not my problem. It's not my concern. I don't want to fund it. I don't want to go and fight and die there. I don't want any involvement in there, because the involvement of me or my country, me being an American, my country being the United States, will only make things worse, will only divide us further, will only embroil this global conflict that we're heading into even more, right? So much World War III talk, and this has been going on since the war in Ukraine started, and it's getting worse with this Israel-Hamas war, another very geographically valuable area in terms of how close it is to the Suez Canal and Port, I believe Said is how you say it, and Egypt as well. That Egypt controls the Suez Canal, and Israel's very close, and they've got access to the Mediterranean Sea, and that that port there, so you can do a lot of trade through there, and the U.S. stages all their operations in the Middle East, in Israel as well. So we have a vested strategic interest in Israel. So of course we're going to send them money. Of course we want to be boots on the ground with Israel in any capacity that we can, if we've got the war hawks in charge, and by God that we do. So that is my plea, is that don't take sides if you aren't involved in this conflict, in the sense of, unless you're in Gaza, in Israel, and you're one of those countrymen or country people, whatever, you should not be taking sides. And even if you are, to take sides, to be tribal, while it is, yes, it's human nature, we've evolved to from tribes, to be in tribes, that's not conducive in the modern society. Really, what we need is the ability to trade and exchange freely, and to realize that we are all going to be very different, and just to leave each other alone. And that's a hard thing to do with the Israel-Palestine conflict, because of how divided that region is, and how tense conflicts are, and the amount of, war. There aren't any war crimes in war, but the atrocities that the IDF and Hamas and Hezbollah are committing against each other just fuels the fire of saying, well, we need to take it to Hamas because of what they did to us. We need to take it to Israel because the IDF is pouring concrete over our water supplies, raping our women, whatever. It's anything that you do to try and get one over on your enemy is only going to stab you in the back, because they'll use that to justify them doing the exact same thing. So really, you need to realize that taking sides, trying to win vindictively, isn't going to do anything. But of course, that's a very obvious thing. So of course, I'm a hippie pacifist, trying to get everyone to get along with each other, when that's not going to happen. So I'll leave that there. But next, we're going to transition into the final topic of this podcast, and it is the need for work. The human condition necessitates work, and that's been consistent throughout our entire history. When we were hunter-gatherers, we had to spend all of our time hunting and gathering food, and desperately making caves somewhat livable, right? And then we clawed our way into the first basic civilizations, and we started farming, and that became the modern Goliath of civilization, where you can work a 9-to-5 job for 8 hours and have a place to live and food and all those sorts of things. And it is quite an amazing thing, but there definitely are a lot of drawbacks, and it certainly is a soulless grind to be a wagey in corporate America. And a lot of people realize that, they see that, they feel that, and they do not want to work at all, right? They say, well, if this is either this or nothing at all, or if this is working, then I don't want to do anything. I just want to, I don't know. I don't know. Well, it's one of the reasons why FIRE is popular, because if you can retire early, I can get to the point where I don't have to work at all, but that necessitates building a lot of wealth, right? And if you want to build wealth, then you have to work, right? So there was this one woman on TikTok who was saying, well, if I have a 9 to 5, how can I do life? Well, you can do life if you're working 40 hours a week, right? You have more time than you think, especially if you're only working 40 hours a week. There's 168 hours in a week. You kind of spend about 56 of those hours sleeping. I believe that's 8 times 7, 56. I don't know, but essentially, if you do the exercise where you take the things that you need to do, that's sleep, work, exercise, and spend time maintaining your relationships, you are going to have a good, anywhere from 40 to 60 hours left over the week, and you can use that time to do basically whatever you want. And if you schedule your time out effectively, you can get a lot done. Now, of course, there are people who work 2 jobs, especially with the cost of living and all the cost of living and these sorts of things rising, where you're working like 60, 80, 100 hours a week even. And then, of course, it's more justified where I don't have time to do these sorts of things. But if your only job is in the 9 to 5, you're working 40 hours a week, then the problem you're facing isn't necessarily the lack of time, it's the lack of energy and the lack of focus. And of course, that's a hard thing to get out of, but you need a change in mindset. You need to change your mindset from thinking, well, it's not work that's bad, it's the work that I'm doing that's bad. And then you can either improve your work situation, or I would say both, improve your mindset around working, right? But if you want to build wealth, if you want to have a good life for yourself, it's going to require amazing effort, because you aren't going to get amazing results out of your lifetime if you don't put in that amazing effort to make your life amazing. So if you want it all, you have to do a lot. There's no way fundamentally around that. So if you're a mediocre, subpar person, that's all your life is going to be, if that's what you're putting in. If you're saying, well, I have to work 8 hours a day, I can't do anything else, or I can't live my life if I'm working a job, then you're not going to have a life, because the fundamental thing you're starting with is that poor mindset. Now, of course, this mindset's forced upon you. In the popular culture, there's a lot of things that are holding you back, financially, personally, that you will be most likely dealing with if you are a younger person. Like, the reason why I'm talking about this, there was this, I'm not sure if I say this one woman on TikTok, I think I did, who was, in this video went viral, which is why I'm talking about it. Saying, well, I can't do my life if I'm working 9 to 5. Fundamentally, the first thing wrong is that mindset of life not being able to happen. Your life is happening regardless, right? You're living your life, it's happening regardless. Every day you're living your life, and you have to realize that and make the resolution to live the best life possible, regardless of the external circumstances forced around you. You have to work and compensate for what you're given, not sit and complain and moan and say, well, inflation's too high, or I got into all this debt when I was younger and it's going to be impossible to get out of it. You're setting yourself up for failure inherently when you do those sorts of things. So that is not the mindset you want to be in. The mindset you want to be in is, I want amazing results, so I'm going to put in that amazing effort, and that is work. So you're going to have to work hard to get a lot, but once you establish that ability to work hard, once you get into that mindset of grinding it out, it becomes easier. Now, of course, I would say success is not a linear path. It's very much a zigzaggy line. You're going to have days that are amazing, you're going to have days that are awful, and you're going to have days that are average, right? That is the inherent, I guess, beauty of the human condition, is that it's a very messy experience. And a lot of that, makes it an awful thing to go through, but also it makes it fun because there is a lot of grind, there is a lot of monotony, but also you never know what you're going to expect in the day to day. It is, in a way, constantly changing, and you have to compensate for that, and you have to make the resolution of saying, if I want amazing results, I'm going to put in that amazing effort, and that is work. That's fundamentally it. So humans have always had to do work to live, right? And that's fundamentally true for humanity. Now, the work that most humans are doing these days is unnatural. It's a slog. It's not fun or productive or enriching to your life at all. And often the pay isn't worth it to not have those sorts of things. So I understand why people feel the way that they do, especially the younger generation, the ones who saddle with all of this debt and the rising cost of living in terms of home ownership and rent and food that chews into your monthly budget, so that your ability to build wealth is handicapped by that, and also all of the debt that you've been saddled with because we're in a debt consumer culture. So I understand that. But you have to realize you're in that situation, and you have to say, well, I need to change it myself. And it's only going to happen if you do it yourself. No one's going to come and save you. That's a sad thing, but you have to make that realization, and you have to say, well, if I want to get out of the hole that I'm in, I'm going to have to get to work, right? And I think I will leave it there. This is a bit of a rambly, tangenty podcast, as it usually is, but I hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll go through the outro now. Thank you for being in the Velvet Room with Jokerthefool. Be sure to follow my Substack, velvetroompublishing.substack.com, to read Machine to Man and all my other projects.